Welcome to Life, Death, and the Law, presented by the law firm of Beeson, Garner, and Hansen, hosted by attorneys Shawn Garner and Adam Hansen.
Welcome to Life, Death, and the Law. I'm Shawn Garner, attorney with Beeson, Garner, and Hansen, and I'm in studio here with Thomas Sparks and attorney Adam Hansen, Cody Beeson, and also Martine. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we're talking this morning about the recent bill that passed. It's a funding bill. It was $1.2 trillion. It was a package of bills to avert the government shutdown that was looming. And part of that bill was TikTok. And a lot of us love TikTok. And I know, Thomas, you're a big fan.
I do. I like it.
But in the bill, unless TikTok is bought by somebody private, I think it might have to be an American citizen, then it's going to be banned. Is that right, Adam? You're reading the news article right there on that. What does it say?
I didn't read that in the article, no. I've read basic facts.
What did you read?
It's more basic than that. It just says that last week, President Biden signed the bill to fund Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan to the tune of $95 billion. And that in that same spending package or bill, TikTok has to be sold or it's going to be banned in the U.S. This is from the Associated Press, so
yeah, it has to be
very
sold
general.
Or it's going to be banned. And why does it have to be sold? Because it's owned by the Chinese government and it's used to spy on, among other things, other people, American citizens. And so if it's got to be sold, I would assume that it's got to be sold to somebody that's friendly to the United States government, and I would assume that have to be a United States company or a United States citizen. So there's some assumptions in there. But I don't know, we'd have to read through the 1,000-page bill that if we did, we would probably be the only 5 people that have, because I guarantee the people that voted on it did not read every page of that bill. That's one thing I can know for a certainty. It was over a 1,000-page bill, and amendments were done in the late hours of the night right before it passed. And there's no way that everybody read, studied, considered the consequences before putting forward their vote on that bill. But yet we've got $1.2 trillion that is now being allocated, and a lot of it, is going to foreign aid. There's been a lot of debate as to whether or not these foreign wars should be continue to be funded by the United States. One of them being Ukraine, the other being the Israel, Gaza Strip, Hamas type war. And then there's the defense of Taiwan, which supposedly we're maintaining our position of the status quo, that Taiwan is neither its own country, independent of China, nor is it 100% governed by China. That is our official position, which is actually no position at all. So we're giving them $10 billion to, soup up their defense and thwart off an impending invasion of China. Of all of that, what steps out to you the most? Is it that Thomas, TikTok is not going to be potentially around for much longer, or it has to be bought out by somebody else? What's your feelings on that? Who might buy it? Will it just go away?
Yeah, I think that it's valuable enough to where somebody is going to want to buy it. I think they'll have a lot of suitors to line up to buy the company. I mean, I'd be interested to see if this would be an opportunity for China to have a power play and say, you know what, you can't have it, and deal with the fallout. But I think if that were to happen, there'll be a vacuum where that need will arise and someone else will, fill that need, as usually what happens in a free market is if someone sees a need, they fill it and they get paid, and then everyone benefits as a result.
My fear is if this can happen to TikTok, who else can the federal government go after?
Yeah.
I understand the concerns about security risks. Maybe they're legitimate, maybe they're not. But at the same time, like what makes us feel immune to the power of the federal government here? I mean, why did they target TikTok? Did they say that in the bill? Ultimately, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, was the deciding factor when putting this all into place. And so he's now getting a ton of fallout
Yeah.
and bad press because of, he's seen as a traitor going over to the Democratic side to get these things done and for all this money. And maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. But what he said was after he reviewed the security stuff that was presented to him, then he changed his mind on some things and he voted for this package.
Particularly the border issues.
Right. And so, maybe that's true. Maybe there's security issues, be it TikTok, the border, or whatever. But my concern is a private company operating in the United States being shut down by the federal government or given an ultimatum if you don't sell a forced sale, then we're going to ban you here in the United States. I don't know if that goes against free speech principles. I don't know if it goes against the freedom of the contract. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of constitutional protections that violates, and the idea that Congress can just pick and choose private organizations that they want to ban. I don't know if that's constitutional or not.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. What it reminds me of is like the argument of eminent domain. Essentially, is like the government has an ability to take your property if it deems that it needs it. And
for the public good.
For the public good, right? And they have to pay you, your fair market value and compensate you for taking it, but they can, without your permission, take it at the end of the day. And it's very similar, I think, to what happened here. And the justification is we felt like we needed to. And that can be very dangerous, to your point, Adam, is that if the justification is simply, I think we need it, and there's a articulable harm that we're trying to avoid, then they can take it. But that sets a dangerous precedent.
I think so, because it's like we're being told something, but we don't know. There's no way to verify what we're being told. We're being told that TikTok is great evil because it's operated by the Chinese and they're spying on every cell phone that has it. And so you shouldn't have it. That's what the government's telling us, or that we've heard that over time. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. I really don't. Do they know more than we do? They said they did during the pandemic, and that really turned out great, right?
Well,
That's a good point.
We know that people have been they found where they've been able to go through your phone and find passwords, and TikTok has been able to geo-track like where you've been. So I mean, the government back when Donald Trump was president was very concerned that people are going to use TikTok and the Chinese government's going to have access to where all of our military bases are and what they look like on the inside of barracks and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And that's been proven.
What's the difference between Apple tracking you? I mean, Apple has all sorts of built-in data harvesting within their own products, specifically their cell phones. The good thing about Apple is that they don't share that information with the government, or they haven't. The government's tried to compel them to do that, and so far they've been successful in saying no. But there will be a time when the government says, "Well, we're going to ban you, or we're going to force you to sell."
I mean, isn't Apple
unless you give us that private data?
Apple's in Nancy Pelosi's congressional district, right?
Yeah.
So there's your difference.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the difference. And so that's my question is, am I more concerned about the United States government spying on me or another government spying on me? And quite honestly, as a private citizen that doesn't have any security clearance, I'm more concerned about the United States spying on me because I've yet to be sent an IRS bill from China. I've yet to be sent a FinCEN warning that says if I don't register my LLC and disclose all of my operations within my companies, I'm going to be fined $500 a day from China. I haven't been sent any of these disclosures. For example, I have a financial license that says if I don't disclose every business that I operate and who I work with in those businesses, then I'm going to lose my license, or I'm going to be fined or potentially imprisoned for up to 2 years. All of those things are coming from my own government. The threats that are coming from China as a private citizen, I don't see. Now, as obviously our government, the federal government's first and foremost priority is to protect us from foreign invasions. And so protecting the United States against China, potentially that's in their interest, but it's a hard sell when they're doing more effectively with the spying upon its own citizens, us, the thing that they're supposedly protecting us against in this China TikTok deal.
I wonder if the underlying issue isn't more like a social warfare. We're not seeing, I don't know, maybe we are. Because of the technological advances, we're what, Shawn, 49 years? Or wait, no, 79 years since the end of World War II.
Yeah.
And
Since European victory. That's going to be next week. It's May 8th is Victory in Europe Day.
the tactics of war during World War II are not what they are today, but there's always going to be similarities in the way that humanity looks for ways to crumble another society or weaken that society such that they can come in and just invade. And so we saw many tactics used in World War II. I think nowadays, because of the technological advances, TikTok being one of them, I think one of the ways that China and foreign adversaries of ours are using are these social media platforms to denigrate the social fabric of the United States such that it weakens our youth, it weakens our impressionable individuals that are being brought up in our country to the extent that they are now conflicted in what's right and what's wrong. We've been told that over many centuries. Most of that goes back to some sort of Judeo-Christian belief based in biblical truth, right? But now we've got an adversary of foreign power that makes things so enticing on a TikTok app that makes it look cool or makes it look like, well, everybody's doing this, that, or the other, that it's got a huge, profound effect on the impressionability of our children.
So, okay, I'm confused as to what is the primary argument against TikTok that doesn't apply to YouTube Shorts or to Instagram or to any of the other social media outlets out there? Why is it so insidious where the others are benign?
I think the foreign actor piece is the only difference.
That's ridiculous. And that's the only thing, that's the only distinguishing factor that I can see as well. How is it any different than any of these other social media influences that we have, especially AI and the ability for someone to create an AI influencer? You could be, and I'm going to pick on big fat guys right now, so you could be this big fat guy living in your mom's basement and create this very gorgeous, seductive woman as an AI influencer, and you can program her to say or do or promote any type of program or service or product that you want. And that's going to have a lot of influence on whoever you target it to, whether it's children, whether it's minors, whether it's adult men. And that is totally okay. But TikTok, just because it's owned by China, is not. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this.
That's exactly it, though, because they said the threat posed by China with its ability under Chinese law to force the app to grant access to Americans' data. Like, that's their reason. Its potential to manipulate the algorithm to advance Chinese propaganda.
Yeah, so going back to what I was saying, it's the propaganda piece that our government is concerned about. And we've seen that. We've seen the demoralization of our society within the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Drastically.
Okay, just one thing.
Sure.
I got to sneak in here. Mm-hmm. When you say the problem and the threat here is that it's using TikTok to advance Chinese propaganda, we know that the United States government is using a lot of tools, including CNN and NBC and all of its other, toady networks out there to advance
Twitter.
Its own propaganda, right?
Twitter during the election, yeah.
That's how Elon saved us.
Facebook. So who is to say that the propaganda being pushed on us or put out there by our own government is less evil and I suppose malicious than the Chinese? Now, of course, the Chinese is a foreign government, but I don't trust our government at all in taking our interest as individual citizens and our individual freedom as its first and foremost priority. I don't trust it at all. In fact, I think that I can judge for myself what influence is the best for me, and I don't care where that influence comes from.
We got to go to break. This is Life, Death, and the Law.
Coming up, more thought-provoking conversations on life, death, and the law right after this. You're listening to Life, Death, and the Law, presented by Beeson, Garner, and Hansen, the law firm that has been voted Yuma's best 6 years in a row.
Welcome back. This is Life, Death, and the Law. I'm attorney Adam Hansen, and I've got my partner, Shawn Garner. We've got Tom Sparks, Martine, and we've got Cody Beeson with us today. We've been talking a lot about this newly passed spending bill that passed last week when President Biden signed it last Wednesday, and it put into effect at least, Shawn, you had over $1 trillion, but
it's $1.2 trillion.
I'm citing the $95 billion that was earmarked for Taiwan.
That's specifically for defense or basically funding war efforts.
Ukraine and Israel. And so within this whole huge package, there was a lot of ham, or whatever you want to call it, pork, I guess is what you call that, as well. One of those things was
pork.
The all-out affront or assault on TikTok. So TikTok either has to sell its company to a U.S. party, or it will be banned. And so we've been talking a lot about that this last segment, about is that constitutional or not. We talked about the threat that the government has told us that TikTok is to us as an American society because of what they're saying is Chinese propaganda that is filtered or pushed on us through TikTok. And Shawn posed the question, well, what does it matter? What does it matter if it's Chinese propaganda or United States government propaganda? What makes TikTok such a bad guy in all this?
And who makes the United States the arbitrator of truth as far as who should be influencing us? The whole idea of freedom is we can accept any idea, any religion, any ideology that we want. It doesn't have to be domestic.
Right, exactly right. That's why I brought up in the very beginning, is it constitutional in the sense of I feel like this is a curb to free speech. It doesn't allow free speech to happen. If you're going to ban an app because you don't like propaganda, then that is and the government's doing that, that's an assault on free speech.
Right. The ideology that I embrace the most is not born in the United States, and it is that Christ is our Savior, that he was born in well, not Jerusalem, but Bethlehem, near Jerusalem, but most of his teachings and doctrine came out of or around Jerusalem, therefore Israel. And so I guess Israel affects most of my ideology. Are we going to ban any app or influence that comes out of Israel next?
Probably, yeah. Tom, what do you got?
I was just thinking, like, when it comes to the practical day-to-day use, like, I scroll TikTok, and I've never seen a Chinese, Communist Party ad on my TikTok.
Well, you just don't know it.
I just don't know it. There might be subliminal messaging. You'll have to look next time I view a TikTok if I go into a trance and they're already programmed me. But I mean that's the point. Is there's an algorithm. So when you view certain videos, those videos tend to show up more often because they're gauging how long did I stay on this video. Okay, I stayed 30 seconds on that one where I insta-swiped on the next one. That must mean you like this one better, so we're going to give you more. So there's, depending on who you are, I would imagine my TikTok feed is much more conservative than somebody else's because I keep getting Thomas Sowell videos that pop up on mine.
Yeah.
And I don't see any difference between that and like YouTube Shorts. As far as I know, China has not tried to attack me.
And as far as I know, YouTube and Facebook are no more benevolent or omniscient in understanding truth and good than anybody else, any other company out there trying to promote their product by making it more engaging so they can sell more advertising.
And so the idea is that, okay, Tom, you might not be seeing this Chinese propaganda that they're saying, but other people might, kids might, and they might be influenced by that, especially as it becomes relevant on whose side you take between Gaza and Israel. If the federal government has a particular position that they like, they don't want their youth to be uprising against them and saying, Israel is the right the right hero in this war,
Right.
as opposed to Gaza. They need their youth to believe what the federal government believes.
I'm sure
Well,
they would have loved having an app when they were interning Japanese in World War II to be able to push that narrative.
Sure, and let's look. The proof is in the pudding, right? Where has the American sentiment turned with these wars? Really, it's turned against Israel, right? Initially, I would say 2 years ago, if you said anything anti-Semitic, didn't matter how untouchable you were. Kanye West,
Yeah.
right? He was the untouchable.
Mel Gibson, that ruined him.
Well, he wasn't untouchable though, right? Not as untouchable as Kanye, because Kanye I saw as kind of Trump-esque. He could say, do anything he want. It was out there. We all knew it was absurd, but he could get away with it. He was a billionaire. And then he went on this anti-Semitic rant when he was potentially drunk and sleepy, and it was because some product of his was not being, I guess, advertised the way it should. Either way, he got banned or censored, or what is the word for that? Canceled. And so that was, we couldn't say anything anti-Semitic. Now, every major Ivy League school has got a march on its campus that's pro-Palestinian. And so if the United States government was attempting to thwart pro-Palestinian intervention into the society, then I don't know, because obviously China supports Iran and the Palestine movement and Hamas and Hezbollah and all of those. It doesn't support Israel. But what's going on right now is we are having all those movements in support of Palestine and Hamas. I don't know if it's a Hamas per se, but at least stopping Israel from defending itself in the way it sees fit.
Well, I'm sorry. I was going to say, look at the Osama bin Laden thing that recently happened within the past year. There's a favorable, image of Osama bin Laden because the people on TikTok weren't around for 9/11. And now this is their introduction. So there is some harm done by this thing.
Yeah, but I agree, but at the same time, the underlying principle in all this, what I believe to be the underlying principle in all this, is the combating of bad speech is not banning it; it's more speech.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
more freedom, not less.
More speech. So that would look like, okay, I start posting videos about the towers getting hit and about these terrorists. So you start to educate the public. You have to have all these views so I can make an educated decision as to whether that's right or wrong. But the idea of just banning particular speech or ideas that I don't agree with, or what the federal government, I'm speaking like the federal government, they don't agree with, I think that's detrimental to a free society.
So what I wanted to circle back, because I don't think I kind of closed the loop as far as this pro-Palestinian movement that's spreading across the nation. And I'm not putting out my view right here. I do have a side that I take with the Israel-Gaza conflict, but or Israel-Hamas, I should say, conflict. It's not Gaza that they're against, and it's not Lebanon that they're against. It's Hamas and Hezbollah that they're against. Anyhow, the thing is, it's primarily the left that is supporting pro-Palestinian. It's primarily the right that is supporting pro-Israel freedom to defend itself the way it sees fit. And so, of course, the administration right now is a democratic administration. And so it seems to me counterintuitive that if the Chinese government is trying to undermine the current administration, it's not doing a very good job, because it's really doing its bidding right now with all this pro-Palestinian protests out there.
What I just want to say really quickly is that I don't really think that it's necessarily that the Chinese government is out here influencing the left-sided ideologies by saying being pro-Palestine and all these other things, because if you think about it, TikTok isn't the only form of social media out there. It's not the only form of short content social media out there. Every single social media out there that's major right now, like Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, they all have these short form contents because they saw how successful TikTok was with it. So, and regardless, the way that that the algorithm at TikTok works is if you see a video, like how Thomas said, if it'll notice how long you watch on the video, if you engage with it, if you comment, follow, share, all these other things. I don't necessarily think that TikTok is the primary cause of that, because if TikTok wasn't around, there'd still be something else that would be influencing people. So it's necessarily, if you want to interact with the pro-Palestine or pro-Israel stuff, that's what you will be fed. It's not that TikTok as a whole is putting pro-Palestine stuff, because from my experience, I saw pro-Palestine stuff when it was trending, right? When everybody was talking about it, when it was at its peak, right? And everybody's posting about this, everybody's making these sounds so that way they can donate money from the revenue that's generated off of the views. But now that I've like stopped interacting with it, my feed's back to normal. So there's pro-Palestine stuff every now and then, because maybe I interacted with somebody who used a filter that was previously mentioned to give money to Palestine or money to Israel. And so that's just what it is. It's not necessarily TikTok itself is forcing the youths now to intake this pro-Palestine agenda. It's just that's what they're interacting with. That's what they find the cause, and that's what they believe is the best option because of what they've interacted with and what they've seen.
Yeah, I think that to what I was saying earlier is that the government's position was, we see that this could easily become a problem, even though I don't think there's much evidence on the ground level that people are being fed Chinese propaganda. But it's an interesting thought that maybe it could be a problem.
I mean, look at what TikTok is in China, and look at what it is over here. In China, it pushes education and science and, you know, advancements and national pride. And here, you know, it teaches kids to eat Tide Pods.
Sure.
But again, I think, like, you know, the combating of that is not shutting it down, in my opinion. I think the founders had it right when they allowed all these opinions. It's not like it wasn't the same back then in the sense of propaganda. Ben Franklin was known to create his own newspaper and regularly push his propaganda.
Yeah,
and
under a pseudonym.
Under a pseudonym. And that's always been the case. So there's always going to be those types of propaganda machines, but the remedy, I don't think, is shutting down Ben Franklin's press or shutting down a TikTok or shutting down an actor, be it foreign or domestic, that even has bad intent. I think we as individuals are built with a pretty good intelligence, and we can most of the time sniff out the bad actors or the things that are being pushed upon us, things that aren't quite right. We now live in a world of AI, which is becoming more and more difficult to discern what's true and what's not, what was actually created and what was real. Like, be it that an actor, you know, talking about what AI is. We talked about that last week in our program, how they used Shawn's
social media influencers.
No, they used
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, well that is a social
crush,
media influencer.
Sean's man crush, Ryan Gosling, to discuss how AI. He didn't like that too much.
That's an eye roll. That's an audible eye roll.
They used Ryan Gosling to describe what AI is and all that stuff, and I knew immediately when I saw that, I'm like, that's not real, because Ryan Gosling has no idea what this stuff is. It wasn't just like AI in general. He might know that, but it was like the interwebs and the deep concepts of AI. I'm like, that's not Ryan Gosling. Mm-hmm. I would have believed that coming from a Ryan Reynolds, but not Ryan Gosling. So I knew right off the bat that wasn't real, but it looks so real. It sounds just like him. It looks just like him. And so we live in this era now where it's going to be more and more difficult to discern what's true and what's not.
Well, here's my beef. Why are we focusing so much on TikTok and not on Facebook? And the reason is because Facebook does the bidding of the left. For example, we've learned specifically through congressional hearings and through lawsuits, there's a lawsuit right now pending from the New Mexico's Attorney General, that after a 2-year investigation, he found that the platform had put together specific algorithms that enabled adults to find and message and groom minors for sexual exploitation and sell. Algorithms specifically designed to do that. It doesn't become more insidious than that. Yet no one's saying that Facebook has to be sold off or dismantled. Why? Because Mark Zuckerberg specifically
Hamburger.
what?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Sorry,
Same thing.
Mark Zuckerberg. Tomato.
That's right.
Funded $400 million specifically to voting units. What were they called? Voting drop boxes.
Yeah,
that
right.
were in primarily Democrat-run areas, so the election could be more easily facilitated by democratically minded or leaning individuals. And so you go back and you look at where is their political alliance, and then you see who is being put on the chopping block. And right now, Twitter is on the chopping block. Twitter is the one that the government's going after. Twitter is the one that all the major social media outlets are going after. Because why? Because Elon Musk lets people say whatever they want to say. He actually hasn't done anything specific or pushed any agenda other than his own and admitting his own bias. But everybody has a bias. As long as you admit it, that's perfectly fine. But he's allowing for free speech, and people seem to be outraged about that. Whereas in Facebook, there's a specific algorithm that can do the worst possible things to specifically groom minors for sexual exploitation, and they're not being fined. Nothing's happening to them. They're not being forced to sell. So you can see that everything that is being done by the government has got some underlying incentive and motivation, and it's not in our best interest.
We've got to go to break. This is Life, Death, and the Law.
Coming up, more thought-provoking conversations on life, death, and the law right after this. You're listening to Life, Death, and the Law, presented by Beeson, Garner, and Hansen, the law firm that has been voted Yuma's best 6 years in a row.
Welcome back to Life, Death, and the Law. I'm attorney Adam Hansen, and I'm here with Shawn Garner. We've got Tom Sparks. We've got Cody Beeson and Martine with us. Quite the crew today, and we've been talking a lot about this affront to TikTok that was actually put into law last Wednesday, by President Biden when he signed the big funding bill for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan.
Well, those are the things that stick out, but really the funding was $1.2 trillion, and there's so much money in it, and there's so many pages in it that nobody really knows where it's all going.
Part of that funding went to border protection, Shawn, and so you were going to talk a little bit about what you found about Mike Johnson, because he was really kind of the last man standing deciding vote, and got it over the hump. So a lot of people are not happy with him on his side of the aisle.
So let me put out there first that I really like Mike Johnson. I think he is the adult in the room most of the time. He sees things very clearly. He doesn't mince words. He doesn't dodge questions. He addresses them face on, and then he makes a judgment based on, the alternatives that he has available. Thomas Sowell, what's his famous saying here, Thomas?
There are no solutions, only trade-offs.
Right. And Mike Johnson understands that there are only trade-offs. So he needs to get something good done in the government, and he might make some concessions while doing that. But his something good comes by way of upping Homeland Security and the border protection. And let's read through what money went through to go towards Homeland Security and border protection, and why was it necessary, and are we using it effectively? So let me just read through here. $62 billion was in discretionary resources for Homeland Security, and the most contentious of that was $59 billion for non-defense programs, and so we're Homeland Security. $62 billion, 59 of it is discretionary, and it's going to be non-defense. Homeland Security, yet non-defense. If you can reconcile that conundrum, then...
Is that how we pay for hotel rooms and private flights and buses?
And it's exactly that. Look, right here, it talks about how $721 million is going to be provided for transportation. How... another 41,000 beds are going to be provided. How there's going to be more for, let's see here.
We're spending how much on transportation?
150 officers are going to be hired to support counter fentanyl efforts. How is the fentanyl getting here? We're not producing it here.
China.
Yeah, it's the know-how is in China, the labs are in Mexico, and then it's being brought across the border, the very open border that the federal government has sued Texas for trying to close and allowing it to come in, but now they want to hire 150 more officers to support counter fentanyl efforts. Then there's going to be another 22,000 Border Patrol agents that are hired. Okay, 22,000 Border Patrol agents. Now, we live in Yuma, Arizona, so we have a unique perspective because we talk to and we see a lot of Border Patrol agents. I've yet to speak with one Border Patrol agent that feels that the current administration really is allowing him or her to do their job, and that is to protect our border. That is to protect people that are trying to enter our country illegally from getting here, detaining them and deporting them. And so we're going to have 22,000 more of these individuals that are really just discouraged that the administration is hiring them to essentially be babysitters and secretaries. And what I mean by that is they're bringing them over to take care of the individuals that come over here and do their paperwork to make sure that they get their amnesty papers in properly so they can sit for this court trial that's never going to occur, or if it does occur, or this court date that when it does occur, no one's going to show up to. That is what pushed Mike Johnson over the hump, was we're going to get more border security. We're throwing a whole bunch more money at border security, but we have enough resources. We just need to allow the Border Patrol agents to do what they were trained to do. I don't think any of them went into the Border Patrol to say, we are going to make sure that they come across the river safely, get processed safely, and understand exactly the words and terminology that they need to use to apply for, what is the word?
Amnesty?
It's
Amnesty.
it's not.
No,
it's
what do you call that?
political
Asylum.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happening right now is they're just processing centers. And a lot of the Border Patrol agents are far enough into their career that it would be devastating to their families for them to pull out now. But there still are a lot that are leaving the Border Patrol, and that's why we need to hire 22,000 more agents. But the ones that are sticking it out, they're demoralized, and it's really hard to see because these are men and women that have dedicated their lives to the protection of our country, and we're not letting them do what they have been trained and dedicated their lives to doing.
Yeah, I just don't see, like, in the long run, 2,200 or 20. What was the number?
22,000.
22,000 new agents are still going to be subject to Mayorkas and the current administration, and they're just going to be told not to do their job.
I'm sorry. So it's not 22,000 more agents. I got to fix that. It's bring the number up to 22,000 total agents.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the point stands that feeding tools into a toolbox that you refuse to use doesn't help the problem much. But I think, like, the spending issue is really what I have a problem with. Like, I think in a previous to the bill passing on, like, April 19th, they were talking about the spending aspect, and the U.S. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall was testifying before Congress about spending, and one of the congressmen, Florida Congressman Mike Waltz, was questioning him on exorbitant spending, where he held up a bag of bushings that would cost someone at the hardware store $100 to buy.
I saw that. Let's have some people guess how much.
Yeah, what do you think?
The Air Force spends on those.
Yeah, what do you think Air Force spends on a bag of metal pieces that would cost you $100?
So does everybody know what bushings are?
Yeah.
Okay. They're really fat washers, like washers and in separation of bolts from the thing that's connecting it to.
I'd say easily $1,000.
20,000.
20,000. Adam, what do you think?
For the whole bag?
Yeah, for the bag.
Yeah, the bag contained, what would you say, 50 bushings? And I don't think it said exact number.
Yeah,
but
maybe
he
50 to 100 maybe.
He held up a bag.
100 washers.
Yeah.
Let's say $10,000.
10,000. These are all good guesses, but the answer is $90,000 per bag
Yeah.
that the Air Force spends on what you could spend $100 on to get.
At the well,
And $100 would be an expensive price. I literally could go to Amazon and get some of those bushings. Now, these bushings, I admit, could very well be very high-grade steel and tuned very, very precisely, but they're still a round piece of metal. That's what it is. It's a round piece of metal, not much bigger than a wedding ring. That's what it is.
You can employ a machinist to make them for you.
Yes, and that's what they're doing. And they're employing these machinists, and these machinists are loving it, and they're laughing all the way to the bank because they're paying them $90,000 for this machine. Because it is being done by a machinist.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I just think that
It's just a single source company
Right,
that
but-
they're employing to do it, and this company has got it in deep with the government, and the rest of us are paying for that company to get rich.
Yeah. So we just need to. Where's the money going? You didn't spend $90,000 on the metal. So let's say it cost you. Let's be generous and say it cost you $1,000, even though we think that's too high. Where does the other $89,000 go if it's not on the metal? It's going somewhere for something, and it just seems questionable. It seems very suspect that our money's not going exactly where we think it's going.
And so let me just put out there an assumption. I think it's going to the company's bottom line and its stockholders, which a lot of which reside in Congress, are making a ton of money. That's where the money is going.
So that would be known probably what a normal person would call money laundering.
Right? It's a way for Congress to get paid millions of dollars for being a public servant, for voting in measures and passing budget bills that line their pocket. In honor of VE Day, which is Victory in Europe Day, it's 79th year anniversary on May 8th. I want to play a clip that my son brought home. He's in school and he's learning a lot about World War II right now, and he knows that I love World War, the facts surrounding World War II, the causes that led up to it, and how the Allies were actually able to prevail. So he talked about this crazy policy that the Nazis came up with to undermine the monetary system of Britain. And so I'm going to play this clip that he forwarded me that he learned about, and he thought it was pretty amazing. So let's play that clip.
Operation Bernhard was a secret counterfeiting operation carried out by the Nazis during World War II with the aim of undermining the British economy. Highly skilled counterfeiters were recruited by the Nazis to produce fake banknotes. The goal was to erode trust in the British pound and weaken the enemy's economy. The counterfeiters worked meticulously in a highly classified facility. They extensively studied the security features of British banknotes, including watermarks, holograms, and specialized printing techniques. With great skill and precision, they replicated these features on the counterfeit banknotes. The counterfeit banknotes were carefully introduced into circulation to avoid detection. They were traded, used in markets and shops, and given as change. The plan was to destabilize the economy and shake public confidence in the British currency. The impact of Operation Bernhard was significant. The counterfeit banknotes were increasingly circulated, drawing the attention of British authorities. An extensive investigation was launched to trace the source of the fake banknotes and expose the masterminds behind the operation. Eventually, the secret facility was uncovered and the counterfeiters were arrested. Although Operation Bernhard was ultimately halted, it had substantial consequences. It resulted in a loss of trust in the British pound and caused economic turbulence. The story of Operation Bernhard serves as a chilling example of the criminal ingenuity of...
Okay, that's worth replaying, just that portion right there, that what the Nazis were doing were printing money, and they were putting it into the economic system so it could undermine or deflate the value of the actual legitimate pounds or dollars, in our terms, that were out there. And it had significant consequences that the British had to deal with. Can you think of any other entity that's out there that is printing money and putting it into the economy that is deflating the value of the money. So I'm going to play that part again, and because it gets better from here. Now think of this, and think of the parallels that are going on between what the Nazis were doing in printing money and what somebody else might be doing closer to home in printing money and pushing it into the economy, especially as of late March. We had $1.2 trillion of money we don't have being printed and pushed into the economy. Here we go again.
The story of Operation Bernhard serves as a chilling example of the criminal ingenuity of the Nazis in their attempt to weaken the enemy's economy. It also highlights the determination of the British authorities to combat such subversive actions and maintain currency stability. Operation Bernhard stands as a testament to the darkness and ruthless tactics employed by the Nazi regime during World War II.
So
Operation Bernhard.
Sorry. So what we didn't get to is, what did the British do? And I asked my son this. What did the British do to counter that attack that was so dark, so insidious, that the Nazis would stop at no level to undermine the Britain's confidence in their monetary system? And he said, well, what they did was they became better at printing new notes that couldn't be counterfeited or that would be easily distinguished from the counterfeit money, and then they pulled all that counterfeit money out of circulation. So they had to pull money back out of circulation. Now, look at what we've done, right? We've printed a ton of money. We continue to insert it into the economy. Do we ever pull back and start pulling money back out of the economy to offset the devastating effects that inflation has had? A car costs twice as much now as it did in 2019. A house costs twice as much as it did in 2019. Martine, you're a young kid. You're working in a professional atmosphere. You have a good job, and you should be able to realize the American dream of owning your own car without car payments, going to school and paying for it without excessive student loans, and buying a home. How feasible are those goals to you?
Buying a car without like a loan or anything isn't the most feasible, but like I know that it's possible with the loan, so I'm like, oh, okay, well, and I feel like that's pretty standard for most Americans. School though, like just schooling in general, thank God we have our community college here that's pretty affordable. But like if we lived in a major city where there was no community college nearby, I don't even think school would be like anywhere near in the picture. Like I'd probably be like saving up almost an entire year to take one class, because credit hours are like $500, something like that, $500, something like that.
Yeah, a typical semester at a state university is around $15,000 per semester. And that's a state university. If you're going as an out-of-state student, you're looking at more like $25,000. And if you want to go to a private institution, you're looking at like $30,000 to $40,000 per semester. Semester is half a year. That's like 15 to 18 credits. So it's very difficult. What about a home? What is the feasibility of you buying a well-constructed home?
Well-constructed mobile home, I think, is the case for me, not a house.
Yeah. Could you buy a house?
No.
You work full-time. You're a highly successful, highly skilled professional, and the feasibility of you buying a home and living the American dream because of what has occurred with inflation, would you agree that is probably nearly out of reach?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what I'm getting to with this $1 trillion package that just got passed. We're throwing good money after bad. Yes, there might be some good things in there, like more Border Patrol agents, officers that are fighting fentanyl. But if we could use those current tools for what we already have and actually enforce the border instead of fighting in court, Texas, from securing its own border and allowing the border agents to do that and stopping fentanyl from coming in the country in the first place, we probably wouldn't need all that extra money to do it. Plus, I think that the long-term effect of devaluing the dollar, not only economically, domestically here at home, is devastating, but worldwide is devastating, because the rest of the world has relied on the dollar as a standard for its monetary measurement. And now with BRICS, it's going away from that. BRICS is China, Brazil, India, South Africa, them all going in their own independent monetary system instead of relying on the dollar. And that undermines America's influence and its policies around the world. I think America is a wonderful country. I like generally the policies and ideas that America stands for, and that is the freedom of the individual and the human rights of every person. But that's going to be undermined by all those countries because our monetary system is being deflated. That's all the time that we have for today. This is Life, Death, and the Law.
If you have questions or want to know more about something that was discussed today, please call the law firm of Beeson, Garner, and Hansen at 928-783-4575 or visit yumaestateplanning.com.